Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Laughing Place Movie Club. I am Mike Mack. I have some friends with me again. Oh, this side, here we go. Some friends with me. Same crew as last week when we talked about X-Men Days of Future Past. I've got Becca, Jeremiah, and Mike. And today we're going to talk about X-Men Apocalypse as we continue our X-Men theme. So let's go around. This is obviously not the most popular X-Men movie, but let's go around. What did you guys think the first time you saw this movie? What was your impression?
Well, the first time I saw this movie was just a few days ago, so it's brand new to me. But I think I liked it more than maybe some hardcore fans or people who were expecting a little bit more grown to love characters from some of the other films. So I didn't hate it, but definitely not the best.
Jeremiah?
I can honestly say I watched it in the theater and I hadn't watched it until today. And my opinion of it is still the same. It is a giant mess.
Mike?
I am also going to be contrarian on this one and say that I don't think this movie is that terrible. I've seen it twice now. Saw it in the theater, watched it last night. I was pretty entertained both times. I think it's too long, and I think the climax has some issues, but mostly I think it's fine. I like all the Magneto stuff. I don't know. It's unremarkable, I guess, to me.
Yeah, believe it or not, I'm actually more on the side of Mike and Becca here. Don't get me wrong, it's not a good movie. It's not good. But when you look at the X-Men franchise as a whole, I think it's sort of middle of the road, right? I would put it ahead of like X-Men: The Last Stand. I would put it ahead of Dark Phoenix, as our note just said a few minutes ago. I'm not a big fan of the first two Wolverine movies. So, like I said, I think it sort of falls right in the middle of this franchise.
My absolute favorite part of X-Men Apocalypse, though, was the direct dig at X-Men 3, The Last Stand, which I totally forgot about and was not expecting, and it made me laugh out loud, literally.
Yeah,
by the way, they're walking out of seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater.
But this is also the third movie in the new X-Men time, so they're just digging on themselves.
Right.
But it turns out the fourth one is worse.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Here's where this movie sort of won me over. I'm a huge sucker for like the shared universe and just being excited for what's coming next, right? So the post-credit scene in this one and the last scene of the actual movie, and I don't know if you guys can back me up on being, if anybody watched that X-Men 90s animated series, but all of their costumes were very similar to those costumes that they had in that series, and they're in the danger room, getting ready to fight. So that I left the theater feeling good after that movie, and then after rewatching it, not so much. But that's where that movie I got a better feel for it.
I think that's my biggest problem with this film is it's trying to set up the next wave of films. Like there's so many different shots at, let's get Nightcrawler in here. Let's get this. We're setting up Wolverine for the movie that already happened 10 years ago, but we're rewinding it and changed it a little bit. And then I do agree that the last scene is probably one of the best scenes in any of the X-Men franchise with the Danger Room. But I still stand by they try to shove everything possible into this film to hopefully make the next franchise even better. And then they failed.
Yeah, it was kind of similar to like Spider-Man 3 in that aspect, right? They just try to throw so many characters at you and kind of overwhelm you with the comics love as opposed to actually focusing on putting together a good story. With that being said, though, I did enjoy this new cast of the X-Men. I like the young Cyclops, the young Jean Grey. I liked that new generation. What did you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think they all were cast really well. Nightcrawler was a little too angsty teenager for me, but he is that character. I think the casting overall was done really well.
I thought
I'd
Ready
agree with
Player
that.
One was a good Cyclops.
Yes. Yes. And Sansa was a great Jean Grey, right?
Right.
For this film.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last week with Days of Future Past. That one of the things that this franchise has done so well has been casting, and I think you saw more of it in this movie. Obviously, McAvoy and Fassbender doing another great job as Xavier and Magneto, respectively. Mike, you specifically mentioned you like the Magneto stuff in this. Anything stand out in particular?
I just love how dark it is. I love that he's like found happiness, kind of living off by himself and working in that factory, and he's got like a wife and kid, and then it just goes so horribly wrong for him, as things tend to do, and you're just like, oh, you guys are screwed immediately. Like, this is not going to go well for you. I love that scene though. I like that scene where
And he takes him out with a necklace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when he goes back to the factory to kill those dudes, and you're like, oh boy, and then Apocalypse shows up to show him who's boss.
Yeah, you feel bad for Magneto at this point, right? Like, it just seems like every movie he just kind of wants out. He doesn't want anything to do with this, and then he just keeps getting dragged back in and forced to be the bad guy.
Yeah, he's like Michael Corleone in that way.
So one of the scenes I wanted to point out too was the Fight Club scene, the German Fight Club, where we meet Nightcrawler and we meet Angel. Real quick, blink and you miss it kind of thing. The guy that Angel beats in his fight before he fights Nightcrawler is actually the Blob, another big X-Men villain, who of course appeared in a different X-Men movie in a very different fashion because there's never any continuity. But so I thought that was pretty cool. Just to throw another. I mean, granted, they've thrown a ton of characters in there.
Wasn't Angel also in X-Men 3: The Last Stand?
He was.
Yes.
Another very different version of the character, yeah.
I thought so. I haven't seen that one since the theater either, so my memory is fuzzy.
Yeah, I don't blame you for that.
So I have a question, Mac. Do you feel like when they wrote First Class or Days of Future Past and they introduced Quicksilver that they had this plan for this film, or was it just hey, let's appeal to Magneto by making finally Quicksilver his son?
I honestly, it's so hard to decipher what their plans were going from movie to movie because, like we said, I mean, there's just like, it seems like they have a movie, they put a movie out, and it's just like, all right, but let's just throw 8 more characters into this one and kind of get it. It's really hard to jump from movie to movie with their whatever their blueprint was.
But it was all Bryan Singer. Like, he should have known something.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. Yeah, there should have been a better plan, but I don't know what it was, if there was one.
One of the funniest things to me about the consistency or inconsistency between all the movies in this franchise is how the mutants age. Like, nobody ages between 1960 whatever and 1983. They all look like they're maybe 5 years older than they were in the 60s. And then, James McAvoy has to go from this point to like 15 years later, he's old Patrick Stewart, like you age very little in that span, and then you have to age a lot real quick.
Well, Magneto has to age even more. Like, he goes from 30-something to 60-something really fast.
It's called Obi-Wan Kenobi syndrome, but
yeah.
A couple of things I wanted to point out as I continue to break the rules and go back to that Fight Club scene. Angel's wings get burned off in the there you go. Get burned off in that fight, and that is something that happens in the comics as well. Apocalypse gives him his wings back after he loses them, so I thought that was a nice touch there. And then going back to Magneto as well, Magda, his wife in the movie, is temporarily, briefly, his wife in the comics as well, and actually the mother of Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. So again, I thought another nice touch, although obviously drastically changed the character in this movie. They had 12% of a plan. Yes, that is accurate. So wanted to touch a little bit on the look of Apocalypse in this movie. Becca and I talked a little bit about this earlier. Anybody else remember the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie from like 1995 with Ivan Ooze? To me, that's all I see when I watch this movie.
Yeah, he's not very frightening in this film.
I was getting vibes of, well, Kyle was getting vibes of Ronan the Accuser and a little bit of Talos from Captain Marvel. And I thought with those things hanging out of that helmet he was wearing, he looked like Predator. And then that little like box around by his neck reminded me of Darth Vader. So I was like, this is a mashup of like a whole bunch of different villains.
By the way, any one of those villains would have been better in this movie. What we got.
And Mac, I have a question for you. You said the Magneto's wife was in the comics, but is his daughter the one who can call down the birds to attack you? Is she anybody in the comics?
I was looking for some information about that character, and I couldn't find. I mean, there are some characters named Nina in the comics, but I couldn't find that specific character with that power set. So I'm not sure. I guess they kind of pieced something together out of that one, as far as I could tell. I don't know if Jeremiah, maybe you knew something different.
No, I was thinking the same thing. Like, I can't recall that character being anywhere. Like, ooh, they have control of birds. There's some powers there. What are they, Aquaman? Oh, DC guy.
Another character I wanted to point out was Caliban, who runs this whatever shady business it is he's running, where he meets Mystique, and he has Psylocke working for him. Caliban actually comes back again, a very different version of the character. You get Caliban in Logan later on. Just so different. And again, another example of just what was the plan there.
Well, I didn't even make that connection that Stephen Merchant is playing that character in Logan until you just said it, but I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't notice it until my watching it last night. So very weird. We do get, as Jeremiah pointed out earlier, another great Quicksilver scene, and I think somebody mentioned last week that it's essentially just the same scene from the previous movie. But I mean, still enjoyable. I thought it was very entertaining.
I really like that scene again too. It worked. The song was great. Made me laugh. Made me cry. Not really.
And even the payoff at the end when they all go flying into the sheet, it was fun. But is he also really strong? Because he's carrying 2 people under his arms at one point, and I'm like, how do you do that? I get carrying one person, but
my wife theorized that it was his momentum that, just like the speed that was carrying those people as much as his strength.
Jeremiah, you're a Flash expert, right? You could probably give us some of the science behind that.
It is definitely the momentum as the person is going. All it takes is a little push. Like when he's pushing the, I'm afraid to see what's going to pop up. When he's pushing the bullets out of the way and that kind of stuff, it just takes that little touch as he's moving at whatever speed he can go at. But yeah, I definitely think that was the highlight of the film. But at the same time, I love the payoff where he's talking to Mystique and he's like, I'm always late. But he showed up in that second of oh, I'm here. Oh, the building's blowing up.
It really makes Quicksilver seem like he would be the most essential mutant to have around. Just any situation, just he would be able to solve it pretty easily.
Yeah, they really do build him up to be sort of this huge, powerful character, and then you get his, he does actually get the better of Apocalypse for a little while, and then obviously it doesn't end well for him there. And speaking of, I wanted to touch on that because because I thought it was interesting, and I had to look back as to when this movie came out in regards to in relation to Age of Ultron, but they kind of teased as if we might see Quicksilver die in this movie. They kind of draw out this moment where Psylocke is walking up with the sword, and this movie came out just the year after. So I thought it would have been really interesting if they had gone with the same angle that we saw in the MCU.
I remember that. Yeah. Go ahead, Becca.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I remember that talk, like when Quicksilver was kind of popping up, and the talk was, will he die in both, or would it be one that would kind of carry over if it ever went forward? Hopefully it will.
Yeah. I do also want to touch on, as we mentioned again last week very briefly, the Wolverine cameo in this movie. Was anybody else caught off guard I totally did not expect to see Hugh Jackman in this movie.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting it.
I would have liked to have seen him stepping out with the helmet on. It didn't have to be Hugh Jackman, but if it was just the cool helmet from the comics, and then he goes about his business, and then Hugh Jackman appears at the very end, would have been cooler.
I like that part.
Mike, your mom is going to be very upset that you're not talking as much.
I don't think she's still awake.
So I did want to get back to the that big fight scene with Apocalypse.
Hey, can I say something else real quick?
Yeah.
I was saying last night when we were watching this that there's a scene in the Clone Wars, not to bring this back to Star Wars, but the finale of the Clone Wars. I don't know if any of you guys saw it, when Ahsoka Tano lets Darth Maul loose to kill all these clone troopers, and it's like the exact same scene as it is when Logan goes Berserker Rage.
That's very true, actually. That is, I did not make that connection. That's pretty funny.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. So yeah, getting back to that big fight scene, all of the X-Men up against Apocalypse, and you see Apocalypse, like we said, with Quicksilver, he, takes care of him. Takes care of everybody really one at a time. And then they build up for this big dramatic scene where Magneto finally flips and he's going to save the X-Men and take out Apocalypse. We just saw Apocalypse wipe out everyone else. Why are we going to believe that just having Magneto now is going to make that big of a difference?
Yeah, that to me was one of the big flaws, that basically all it took was Magneto changing his mind to defeat Apocalypse. Go ahead, Jeremiah. Sorry.
I just don't understand Apocalypse's powers. Does he control sand? Is that his main thing? Oh, we lost Becca. But that fight is huge, and then all of a sudden Magneto just shows up and throws metal at him. And then Jean in the dream state, which is very strange. I understand that's how they can make Apocalypse the giant that he is in the comics and in the cartoons. But that whole dream fight between him and Charles is a little weird.
I think X-Wing pilot is what you're looking for there.
Poe does fly that TIE fighter in the beginning of The Force Awakens. So I think that's what they're going for. Oh, man, there was some stuff in Apocalypse where they're in that, the psychic realm or whatever you want to call it. That reminded me a lot of Legion, the TV series about Professor X's son, which I love with all my heart, and made me wish I was watching that instead, I guess. But
Jeremiah, I thought it was funny that you mentioned what is his power? Is it controlling sand? As I was watching the beginning of it, his backstory of Apocalypse and everything, all I could think of was, this is just the Mummy. This is just the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie. And it just kind of, you're right. Yeah. Just big face of sand coming at you. That's his powers. That did actually, that did prompt me to look up, because I've read comics with Apocalypse. I've seen him in the animated series, and his power set is not really clear. And I think if you're wondering what Apocalypse's powers are, the answer is yes. If you were to look at like a Wikipedia page, it's just, the whole thing is just every power you've ever seen a superhero have. He has it. He can do it.
Except control metal.
Except control metal or make a good movie, apparently.
Yeah.
And it is a shame because, oh, there we go. Got Becca back. I love Oscar Isaac, and I'm sure, Mike, you feel the same way. I think, very enjoyable through the new Star Wars movies. But
yeah, I mean, inside Llewyn Davis, how can you go wrong there?
But yeah, it just seemed like not that this is the first time it's happened, but it just seemed like such a waste, unfortunately.
Yep.
Until you actually said that, it wasn't in my head that was Oscar Isaac's. Like, I tried to block that as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Put that block back in there so now you don't have to hate Oscar Isaac and not want to see anything with him in it.
Well, you do
Didn't
see
he give
him
up on Star Wars? Didn't he say he's done with it? Peace out. Oh no, that's.
You do see Oscar Isaac without the makeup at the beginning, don't you? When they're laying him out on the table.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, very briefly.
I thought was a cool scene. I just didn't feel like, maybe you guys already talked about this, but I didn't feel that Apocalypse himself was very scary of a villain. And not anything against Oscar Isaac. I think it's just the way the character was written, like
Yeah,
the way he looked, everything. It's just
Ivan Ooze can only be so intimidating, really. I mean, you give him every power in the book, and it still doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's usually the Four Horsemen that are the big, like his Four Horsemen are usually the biggest problems that the X-Men face, and then Apocalypse is kind of like we'll just throw metal at him. But that was one. I'm sure you're about to touch on that, Mac, about the Four Horsemen and that mistake.
I did plan to get to that. Like last week, I pointed out a bunch of the differences between the comics and the movie. That is the only one that I really wanted to point out today was the Four Horsemen. So Psylocke and Angel were both members of the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse at different times, not in the same iteration. But Storm and Magneto, especially Storm, I thought was just such an interesting choice to throw into that situation.
Yeah, she was very much like, okay, we just need to get Storm into the X-Men again, so we'll just pull her. And Storm is African, if I remember correctly. I don't remember correctly, I know that, but she was African or South African, not Egyptian, which is what they made her in this film. Or
Egypt is in Africa, so you know.
Yeah, I believe Kenyan in the comic, where it changes. I think depending on what you're reading, or what you're watching. But yeah, I actually was wondering if I had missed that they mentioned, like, if something got thrown up on the screen as, like, maybe did it say like Kenya or something, but no, I guess not. I guess if you're pointing out that she was Egyptian, I guess. Yeah, another interesting character choice. Especially, I mean, I just thought, you're taking one of the most popular, one of the leaders of the X-Men and throwing her into this situation. It just felt like such a weird introduction, quote unquote, introduction to the character.
well, and even between this and Days of Future Past with Halle Berry, like, I felt they didn't give the character enough to do. I mean, like, she didn't have anything to do. She didn't, like, it's been a long time since I've seen the first X-Men and X2, but I felt like Storm was a much bigger role or much bigger part in everything they were doing. And this was like, in this movie, for half of the film, the only thing we saw her do was like create a gust of wind when she was taking something in the market, right? Like, I don't know. But
yeah, we didn't get to hear her deliver any great lines in this one. Like, what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning?
I was just thinking that.
Oh, Joss Whedon.
I might be the only one in this group right now that watches Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I thought it was interesting that Xavier blocks Moira McTaggart's memories and just kind of removes that block very easily. That would have been a very convenient thing for them on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this past week, but I won't go too much into that in case anybody hasn't seen it yet or is maybe 7 full seasons behind.
yeah.
This season is so good. So good.
That's what I hear.
It's fantastic. It's been so good. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to add? Coulson Lives, yes.
That is his superpower.
Yep. Anything they wanted to add about maybe that final fight scene that stood out, or really anything at all?
I mean, this is me just being silly, but like Dark Phoenix, right? Or Phoenix emerged, and
Mhm.
then they cut to Mystique, and I'm like, that's right, Katniss, you're no longer the girl on fire. Like, yeah, that's where I'm like mixing too many movies together. But I mean, it looked really cool though. It looked really cool.
Mike, do you have anything before I go into my long rant?
They got Professor X to lose his hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I kind of rolled my eyes at that. Like there's just some things we don't need explained. You know, like they also took the time to explain why Storm's hair is white. You don't have to explain it. Just it happens. It's fine. You don't need to spend any
Koreans, we get it.
And that's called Solo: A Star Wars Story syndrome.
Oh, I guess it's me since I'm the showcase now. I have two major problems with this movie, other than it's a mess. What is the purpose of what is the purpose of having Jubilee appear in like 5 different scenes when they never even have her showcase do anything or be a real character? And then my other one is Psylocke. She just disappears at the end. She like scampers off in the corner. I'm guessing it was supposed to be like she would have more coming in one of the next movies, but both of those characters were underused and should have been, especially Jubilee. I think, Mac, you mentioned how the cartoon is one of your favorites. Jubilee was the highlight of that cartoon and made most people love it. But this movie, you just see a girl running around in a yellow jacket. And if you didn't know the characters, you would have no clue who she was.
Yeah, I was going to going off of what you said first. What was the point of having Jubilee in this movie? To me, I would say, what is the point of Jubilee? It's a character who basically shoots fireworks out of her hands, and not the greatest superpower. They kind of played Rogue into the Jubilee role in the first X-Men movie, right? Like she's kind of that kid that's just always getting into trouble and needs to be saved. So yeah, I agree with you. She didn't need to be. And it would have been one thing if she was just kind of in the background in the mansion, but she was in a lot of scenes with the main characters. So it was a very interesting choice to add her in there.
Yeah. I mean, when they go, when they take Nightcrawler to the mall for the first time, it's Jean, Cyclops. Thank you. Jeez. Oh, that's a whole other thing I need to go off on in a second. I don't want to be showcased. Thanks, Benji. Thank you.
It's like Duck Amuck now.
Yeah, but she's showcased in the group, and you always think, oh, she's going to be doing more. Also, didn't Scott's brother die in between First Class and Days of Future Past? I mean, don't they show him in one of the autopsy scenes?
I thought we saw him in the army in Days of Future Past.
Yeah, exactly. Mystique saved him. He got away.
Okay.
And he kind of disappeared after that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he shows up and everybody's like, "Oh, we've missed you." Again, you don't need to watch any other movie unless you need to know who the characters are that you're watching a 3-hour movie about.
I do want to touch on that mall scene you mentioned. I thought it was interesting too. I had to look back to see when this came out in relation to Stranger Things, because this movie being set in the 80s, they touched on the 80s culture a little bit, but they didn't really get into it. And then Stranger Things happened and the 80s culture just blew up. Would have been interesting to see if this movie had done that, how that would have been, like, maybe would have been differently received at all.
Yeah, I also, it's interesting because they never say the time, but it's, after 84, so it's 85, 86, somewhere 84, 85, 86.
No, wait, they do definitively say what year it is. It's 1983.
Do they?
It's the 10th anniversary of last movie.
You. Yes.
And Return of the Jedi is playing in the theater.
That's right.
Oh, that's true.
No, but it's a brief thing. It says Ohio 1983, and then Scott's in school. But yeah,
I only watched it like 10 minutes ago, so please forgive me.
No, I did have a note about Havoc actually, also, which is Cyclops' brother. one of the big eye roll moments in this movie for me was when they're in Cerebro and Apocalypse starts attacking, mentally attacking, and Xavier looks at, Alex, and he tells him, "Wreak havoc." Like, as if, like, this is the third movie he's been in. We know the character's name. You don't need to force the superhero name, at that moment. Just kind of, like Mike said, give us that solo moment right there.
I'm going to need you to go Wolverine on these guys.
Oh, no, my favorite eye roll is when when Logan goes running away. Well, we probably won't see him again.
I know.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, that's pretty bad. That's a bad one. That was like in Titanic, where like they're like Pablo Picasso paintings. Those will never be worth any money or whatever.
Yeah.
Remember that?
And there's our Titanic reference for the year.
Yeah, I was
now Disney owned.
I was still waiting for 70s baseball trivia for tonight, but I guess we're gonna have to skip a week. I did want to touch on the post-credit scene again. I know we mentioned it earlier, but and I talked about this last week, how that post-credit scene got me so excited, just merely with the name Essex Corp, Nathaniel Essex being Mr. Sinister, another great X-Men villain. And I thought interesting too, in the comics, Mr. Sinister is actually, or Nathaniel Essex is the one who awakens Apocalypse, and then Apocalypse eventually turns Essex into Mr. Sinister. So I liked the connection there that they were going for, and would have loved to eventually see Mr. Sinister in these movies, but unfortunately we got Dark Phoenix instead.
I was reading about this last night, and apparently they were going to set up Mr. Sinister to be the villain in Logan, and what's his name? Who directed Logan? Ford v Ferrari. What's that guy's name? Anybody?
Oh, Mangold? James
Mangold. Yeah. I was going to do the Boba Fett movie. He didn't want to do Mr. Sinister. But then they said that the DNA that they collected there in that post-credit scene was used to make Wolverine's daughter or whatever in Logan. So there was a little bit of a connection there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I would have liked Mr. Sinister as the villain in Logan. I don't think that would have been that good of a fit. Mr. Sinister's more connected to Cyclops and Jean Grey anyway, so would have been a better fit for an actual X-Men movie. No baseball trivia on opening day. Unfortunately, no, nothing this week. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add? Jeremiah, any more points to rant?
No, I'm good.
I was absolutely fine with the billing on this movie. No issues.
Will the MCU handle the X-Men better? I mean, you have to assume, right? I would imagine so.
It can't be worse.
But you think about people's conception of what the X-Men is now. Most of them are going to think about this movie franchise that ran for however many years, and I think they're going to have to do it pretty differently. I think the approach is going to have to be very different from what Bryan Singer and company did, just to differentiate it, because you can't just reboot it and have the exact same configuration of characters, and I don't know. It's going to be tough. It'll be tough to replicate without feeling like a rerun.
But couldn't they technically bring McAvoy and everybody in? Like, depending on how they do it.
Theoretically, I guess, if they wanted to.
Yeah, maybe we could get that middle point between.
It certainly seemed like Jennifer Lawrence has been done with X-Men for a while, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think there are a few members of the cast that would feel that way. Obviously, Hugh Jackman said he was done as well. But I think the problem you run into with bringing that same cast back in is the more casual fan is going to go in expecting it to be a continuation of those past stories, and then you can't use characters like some of the villains and stuff like that. So I think you have to reboot it. And I do agree, Mike, I think it's going to be a hard time, filling, what people know as the X-Men at this point, or a lot of people know as the X-Men. I think especially Wolverine is going to be very hard to recast. People are just going to always look at Hugh Jackman as Wolverine.
And not do Grace Scott.
I think that's why, we're not looking at X-Men until Phase 5 or whatever Feige said a while ago. And hopefully, first the Fantastic Four come in, and then we get the X-Men somehow.
See, Fantastic Four, I could see them taking it back to the roots and try to be as true to the original comics as possible, because they haven't ever like done that well in a movie. So I think that the tone of the MCU as it stands is so ripe for those characters because it's got that balance of humor and action and stuff.
Yeah, we joke about this X-Men franchise and give it some grief, but in the end, they made 10 movies. They were, for the most part, very successful, and people remember them. And so, like you said, with the Fantastic Four, I think you have no problem rebooting it because people aren't attached to those movies. But there are people attached to these X-Men movies. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with what you said, Mike.
Will the MCU FF be better than Josh Trank's? I can only imagine.
Not gonna lie, I still have not seen that, and I really don't want to.
That is one of those movies that I will not watch, even though I have it on Disney Plus. Nope.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the New Mutants.
I didn't see the panel.
Well, Mike or Jeremiah, you didn't miss too much from the panel aside. Oh, all right. I guess he's just gonna block himself out entirely. Yeah, it would be cool to see the new. It'd be cool to see these New Mutants because, as I said earlier, when Mike, you and I and Benji were talking about the day at Comic-Con, the characters in this movie are very interesting. It's a very cool cast of characters, and I would like to see more of them than just this one movie. But who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Maybe this will be the doorway into the MCU for the mutants.
I do think that when Dark Phoenix comes to Disney Plus, we have to do it because we need to finish it out. You have to follow through.
I would be up for that. That means I'd watch it for a second time. Yes.
I think we could fill a half hour with just Jeremiah's rants on that movie, probably. So that should be an easy one.
I watched it on a plane, so I was like half paying attention. But
you were lucky. Before, who is it that is the one? Was it Quicksilver that dies? Sorry for anyone who has watched. Quicksilver dies like 3 seconds into Dark Phoenix, or there's a character. No, Mystique. Mystique just they kill her off in no time at all. They're like gone.
Yeah, that's J-Law wanting out, right?
Probably.
Yeah. She's like, I have an Oscar, you guys. I don't need to do this.
Just wait, she'll be back.
All right. Anybody else have anything else to add on X-Men Apocalypse aside from the Taylor Swift album?
Yeah. I think you need to calm down. That's what I say.
You're being too loud.
All right.
I don't have a fun quote. Sorry.
Look what you made me do. I think on that note, we need to wrap this up. So thank you guys so much for talking about X-Men Apocalypse, and thank you everybody for watching. And we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks.
Yep. Pirates of the Caribbean next week, Monday.